Hello, and thank you for joining us today. We'll be looking at the cage ladder macro from the Advanced Steel PowerPack. Today, we'll be focusing on the PowerPack ladder tool, on how to place the PowerPack ladder. I'll provide a rundown of the options currently available in the 2025 release. We'll take a look at another useful tool that can be used with the ladder. I'll show you a way to see what's coming next and even provide your own feedback. And once done, if there's any questions, we'll be available for some Q&A. Let's start by taking a very quick look at how the ladder can be placed and what we need to keep in mind while we're inserting it. This should only take a couple of minutes to do each time you want to place a ladder. To begin, if you come across the top, you'll notice that there's a tab with the name PowerPack. In here, you're going to find a section called Stairs and Rails. And with this package installed, you'll notice that you have a variety of different staircases, handrails, and now a ladder as well. The cage ladder, when you come into here, you can left click on this. And in order to insert it, you're going to see it asks you to select the base point of the ladder. So you're going to pick your first point. And then it's going to define what is the second point, the height and the angle. So if I do it straight up like this, you're going to see that the ladder will come out vertically, since the 2 points that I selected are vertical. Now the front of the ladder will always point towards whatever direction your Y is pointing towards. So if this positive direction for Y is towards the front, that will be the front of the ladder. If the Y is pointing the other direction, the other side will be the ladder. So make sure you set your UCS initially so that the Y points towards the direction that you want as the front of your ladder. Now, we'll come back and go through the settings later. This is more just to see where we can find it and how it can be inserted. If we come back to here again, you'll see if I pick that same tool again, I'll left click on it. I'm going to pick the point at the bottom of the ladder. And this time, instead of going vertically, I'm just going to come over to here on an angle, and I'll pick a point towards the back side. And you'll notice that if I move this out of the way, the ladder came in, and the height is the same, but the angle of the ladder is different. All right. Now, what I mean by the height is the same is the ladder goes up to a certain point. You can see there's the initial line that I selected, and then we have an extension. And over here, it's the same thing. The ladder goes up to a certain point, and we have an extension. If I look at this from the side, you can see that they are basically the same height. There's no difference between them. So this gives us both our ladders. We have a straight one, a vertical one, and one that's sloped. And if you want to come in and work on it from there, you can always save your settings. We're going to go through those settings in a minute. We can go to the settings and then at the end save them as a library entry. So very quickly, I could say I want to see this as a round cage or a square cage. These are settings that I've saved, and I can load that in. And you can see now that ladder is going to come in based on the settings that I've saved. So initially, you're going to come in, you're going to pick 2 points with Y pointed towards the front. Your ladder will come in. You're going to go through your settings to create the first ladder. And if this is typical of what you make, it may not be exact every time, but if it's typical, save it. And then the next time you want to come in and create a ladder, you need to simply select your 2 points. Once the dialog opens up, you come in and you pick the ladder that you want. And you're going to see it's going to come in according to those rules, right? So even though it was sloped initially, my rules say it's not, and it came in straight. But you can load those immediately, and it gets those settings. I end up with, there's my ladder with my cage. And that took almost no time at all. And this can be the case for you as well. When you create your ladders, save them into part of your library, and then next time you need them, placing them in is very quick and very easy. Now that we've seen how a ladder can be created using the PowerPack, let's go back and focus on the settings that are available to us. To begin, we have two ladders. I'm going to remove one and focus on the other, so we'll just start by erasing that one, and I'll zoom in here. If you've just created the ladder, you're going to get a dialog box that opens up with all of your different settings and options. But if it's closed, let's say you moved on to something else, you want to come back and you want to open again, you have two choices. You can select that box, right-click, and go to the Advanced Joint Properties. Or you can come and you can double-click on the box. It'll do the same thing. Your dialog box with the properties will come up. In here, this first section, Properties, it just gives you a basic information. So it tells you this is a cage ladder. There's really no options. You can put a name for the ladder. And it tells you a little bit about what this ladder was created with, which version. If I come down to Definition, this is where the settings for the ladder begin. You're going to notice that it has two tabs, one ladder, one cage. And below, inside the definition area, they extend the settings here for ladder to the ladder section and for cage to the cage section. It gives you more properties there. So what do we have in here? Well, under geometry, this is where we can define our basic height for the ladder, not including the extension. So I could come in here and I could change the height. The width of the ladder itself looks at how wide this ladder is, and you have three choices. You can measure from the inside of these vertical members to the middle of those vertical members or to the outer edge of the vertical members. So that distance can refer to whichever you prefer. Set that, set your distance, and it'll create the width of your ladder. The rotation itself, if you needed to rotate it after the fact, let's say I put 70, you can see the ladder is going to rotate around its central axis. So in here, I wanted this ladder turned. It turns it based on whatever value I set. As far as the pitch or the lean is concerned here, you can see ladder pitch. Same idea. If I come into here and I type in a value, you'll notice that it's no longer going to be vertical. Now it's on an angle based on what you type in. Okay? And it tells you if you hover over it, recommended incline is between 75 and 90. So because I went below 75, it gave me that red marker. For the cage, in here we have things like we can disable the cage completely if we don't want it. Just take it off, you'll see it disappears. If you do want to have a cage, this is where you're going to turn it on, because you can't, no matter what settings you go through for the cage, they won't work unless you enable it first, and that's right at the beginning. You can decide the type of cage you want to have here. Is it going to be circular or is it going to be rectangular? So if I were to go to rectangular, you can see I'm going to get this rectangular type cage coming in, right? And you have circular. The radius of the cage, or the main radius, you can see right here, is R, which is the radius of that cage. You can set that to whatever you want. You have the distance from rung. So from the rung itself to the far side of the cage, so even though the radius may be one thing for the round, you can push it out further if you want, based on the distance from your rungs. Your rectangular width, if I had the rectangular cage, what is the width of that? The corner radius, what is the radius of that? Okay, so when it comes in the corner, let's go back to this for a second. You can see now I have what is the width of the cage, what is the radius of the cage in the corners. Okay. Now you'll notice that both of those values are red. They're marking that it does not fit. If I hover over it, you can see it says it should be between 2'2" and 2'8" for this one, and this should be 6 inches. So let's say I change this to 2'2", just to. Okay. The moment I do that, you'll notice that it's no longer red. It doesn't warn me of any problems, and it says the rectangular width must exceed the ladder width. That's all it tells me. So you're getting a different tooltip based on what's going on here. here it tells me what the corner radius should be. Now, where does it determine my rectangular width, my corner radius? Well, if I look, I'm working on cage, and we have an area down here called cage. So if I click on that, we can see there's a tab called constraints. And in here, I can set what are my constraints for the start height for the cage, the hoop spacing, the main radius, the rectangular width, distance from rung. Here's my corner radius. So it has the different options in here. You can set what it should be. So you decide what that main radius should be or what the distance from rung should be and set that in here. And if it falls outside of these areas, you're going to get a warning. See, corner radius 5 7/8. And in here it says it should be 6 inches minimum. So the minute I go to 6, now you're going to see it no longer warns me because it falls within those constraints. So this is a quick way where you can come in and you can set your constraints, and then as you're placing your values, it'll keep track of whether it falls into those constraints or not. For the ladder, in here we have, do we want to have this? It's automatic, or you can uncheck automatic if you like, and you can say how many rungs you want to have, set it yourself, and it'll automatically evenly divide them. The rung alignment from the top or from the middle, where's that first rung that's going to determine where the measurements are taken from. It could be from the middle of the ladder outwards, or it can be from the top of the ladder down. The first rung distance, it's grayed out right now because all rungs are equally spaced, but if I uncheck that, I can set a different distance. My rung rise, first rung distance. Okay. We have in here constraints. And again, we have ladder maximum height, rung rise. It should be between 9 inches and a foot. What is the distance in between, the ladder width, and so on and so forth. So it tracks all of that. We also have the ability to set what is going to be our default section profiles. So here I have my style, which is my vertical members. What shapes are we going to use? The rung section, what shapes are we going to use? And you can define those. And you can save these settings here. So if you want to very quickly change your constraints and your section profiles, set them up and then save them and give them a name. All right. You'll see if I load this, it changes. There's the values that came with the default. And if I put my imperial one and I load it, you can see it's going to change it back to where I had it. So you have the ability to make these constraints, save them as a template. It doesn't do the entire ladder here. This saves just the constraints for the ladder. Same with the cage. You can do the same. All right. And again, you have here your ladder. You can say what is it by number and you can, how many you want to have, or by spacing, and then you can type in the spacing and so on and so forth. It'll come as close to that as possible while keeping it evenly spaced. In the ladder area, we have the ability to come in and say what shapes we want to use. This will take the default will be whatever it is that you've defined under definition, and it'll bring it into here. So if you've defined it already, it brings those shapes to here, and then you can make changes from here if you choose. So the rung penetration, here you have rung connection type. You can see it's either aligned, cut, or penetration. So aligned is more of it's not quite straight. It still follows the direction. Cut goes just whichever way it goes. It cuts along the edge. And then you have penetration, which you can see it's going to open it up, create this hole where the rung can come through. And then you can extend or shorten that rung as needed. And you can set the clearance around the rung within that hole. You also have the option to split the vertical members. So in here, if I come in, that's under split. You can see I have this vertical member and then I have another vertical member, and it's being controlled here. I can go based on rungs by max distance or remove the splits completely. In this case here, we have two rungs at rung 5 and at rung 10. It's being split, and then from the rung itself, it's being offset 6 inches. So that's where the splits are coming in. And if you want to leave a gap between them, you could. You can also weld them together from here and say whether it's a site or shop weld. These welds here are for the rungs themselves, so you can determine what type of weld you want to have in here for your rung. You can see it's at the plug right now, but you could have different types. Set what you want. Where is the position on both sides? Just on the inside, just on the outside? What is the weld location? Is it a site or shop weld? For the exit, this is part of the extension, which comes up and over. You have the option here, you can see splayed loop over or just straight. If you didn't want to have a loop, you can just do a straight extended and go straight up and continue. Splayed extended comes up but spreads. And you also have here the splayed with the loop over that we started with. Your exit details. So here you have what is the distance. You can control the distance or by angle if you wanted it by angle. You have, if I put angle, you'll see, let's say 45 degrees, right? And you can set that to whatever you like. And this is the angle of where it's being splayed. Or just a space in between. You know, I want it to come over by 4 inches. I want it to come over by 4 inches. Each side's independently controlled. Your loop distance, how far do you want it to go back? What is the height in the back for the piece to come down? The corner types can be mitered or bent. So if you put the bent, you'll see that it actually comes in bent instead. So right now we have this piece here where it's being splayed, that's bent. And if I put it to miter, now it's going to change it and it's just a miter cut. And it's on the style and what have you. So depending on your settings, you can change these as well. The butt joint positioning, the corner cut, and so on and so forth. Right now, based on the settings I have, these are great. Your rungs extra. Now this is above the ladder. So where the ladder ends, right? Then we have our extension. So from this point, we have these extra rungs near the top. And you can come in and say what you want them to be. Now, because we have the opening splayed at the top and it's stepping out like that, I can't change it at the moment. I'd have to go back and turn all that off. But you have the option in here for, you know, what is the end distance? How far from the top is that rung? What is the exit spacing? You know, what is the number of rungs to be placed in there? And so this is the extension beyond the standard height of the ladder. So if you included an extension, you can control those rungs. The welds for the piece coming up and over, the style exit and the loop over. Again, this might change based on what type of exit you have. If you don't have the loop, you may have some other settings here. You have the step off in here as well. And you can see that I have in here a little piece that comes off of the ladder and some rungs going this way horizontally. That's the step off. And you can control your step off here. How far does it extend? You know, what is the distance in between your elements? Support vertical offset. You even have control over the shapes that get used. So it doesn't have to be the same as ladder. If you don't want them to be, they can be something different. If you don't want that, you can completely disable it and you can see it'll disappear. So it's not a mandatory thing. It's just something that if you need that, they have it. Here also, step off, the second set of rules in here, calculated max or number of rungs. So again, you're deciding what is the gaps in between, you know, by the number, by the space, you can determine it here. The rung section, what size shapes they use. So in here we were using 3/8 by 3/8. Oh, that's the thickness of the bar there. Sorry, that's the slat coming up. The rungs themselves were, let's just go back to definition quickly. Ladder, cage ladder, here we go. We had the shapes were here. Rung size, 3/4 inch, right? So if you come back into here, now you have control over the ladder, exit, step off. So if you wanted, you could change that's the flat. And then here we have, instead of 1/2 inch, you can set it to 3/4. Now it'll match the other ones. So, and again, Do you want these pieces to be with penetration, just cut or aligned? They don't have to be the same as the ladder. You have control over it there. You can extend and shorten it. You can say the ladder rung extends through the support, right? So if you wanted to, you have that. It goes, the ladder rung itself will go all the way through the supports. You have in here, what is the rung clearance, the weld size, type of weld, and where is it positioned, both sides, externally, internally. So that gives you just this little piece that's coming off. You have these two tabs. Ladder supports. For the back side here, we have this bent plate, which comes out. You can see it's bolted right now to the stringer. And you can say, what do I want to use? And enable supports or disable them, first of all. You don't have to have them. If you want them, turn them on. You can come in and you can choose what you're looking for. So you can flip them around. Right, have them face the other direction. Control how far up before they start. Where's that first support from the bottom, and how far from the end is the last support. And then you can say what is the max distance in between. And by doing that, it's going to calculate evenly in between them. So I want to start the first one here. I want the last one there, and in between, maximum distance of whatever. Or you can say I want a certain number of them. If you need to, you can offset any one of these just by coming to that support number. So that'd be 1, 2, 3 going up, and you just pick the one you want to offset and say, this is number 2. I could come into here, say support number 2, and I could offset it 6 inches, and you can see it's going to move that one up or down. You do negative as well. Okay. So you have full control over the placements of the ladder supports and where you want them to go. In here now, support, you can control what is the depth. Okay. That's the thickness, basically, or the width of that. You have the thickness of it. You have how far does it extend. And then on the back side, the flat side, how long or wide is that? How far does it overlap on the style? So from the edge of the style inwards, right? Actually, if I believe if I put 0 in the center. So if I put 0, you'll see, yeah, in the center it comes to. And then you can extend it from there or shorten it from there. Okay. You have in here the whole diameter and distance and so on and so forth. If you want to weld it to the ladder, you can just turn that and it very quickly removes the bolts and places a weld instead. And then depending on which one you pick here, you'll have the settings for bolts or welds, and you can go through and select those. Okay. And again, this can be on the outside, the inside, or the middle. So if you didn't want to attach it inside or outside, and you just want it flat along the edge on the back, you can put it to middle. You can put it to the inside. Where that gets placed, it's up to you. So your choice, set it up the way you want. It's going to come in. As for the cage, in here now, if we're focusing on the cage, we have the general setup. So again, hoop section, what shapes are being used? Again, under definition, you have your defaults. Remember, you have cage, constraints, you have your hoop and strap profiles here. It'll take that by default, and you can change it from here if you want. Style overlap, same thing we just saw with the fasteners on the back. You can have the cage, how far does it overlap, and it tends to go to center. And again, you can extend it or shorten it. Is it welded or is it bolted? So again, you can do for both the hoop to strap and hoop to style, right? You can come in and you can put it to bolts or welds, you see. You can have that welded to the vertical members on the cage or to the ladder itself. You can have it bolted or welded. You have the strap itself, and then it's broken up into sections. So this first section where it comes around, there's a distance and a strap distance. And again, you have section 1. How many verticals do you want? Right? And then you have after that section 2 in here. How many verticals do you want? And you can go by distance, you can go by number. And then section 3 over here, how many verticals do you want to have? Again, by section or by number. And if you don't want one, by the way, you can put 0. You have that option. You can leave a gap. You have this definition based on arc by distance or by angle. So if you want to do it by angle instead of by distance, you can. Again, you can do by segments like we're seeing there, or by total length. So if you want to do it based on total length, you can see now it's just, you're going to put in, there's no segments. What is the spacing and how many, or how many do you want? So it's up to you when you're developing it, how you want that to go. Now this will control the cage near the bottom. It doesn't control the cage, the extension. Okay? There is the exit up here for that. Split. Again, we have the ability to these vertical bars. If you want to split them, you can, like by distance or by hoops. Pick a hoop and then offset from there if you want, or by distance, and the verticals can be split. And the welds. So these are being welded right now. That's what we chose. So you can choose the welds. If we had bolted it, you would choose the bolts. So you can choose the bolt cage or the bolt ladder. You know, where it bolts the ladder, where it bolts the cage together. And here are the welds, same thing, strap or style connections, and they're separate. So this gives you your main section of your cage. Then you have cage exit. So if I were to disable the cage exit, you'll see this is the top area. So what we were looking at before was this. And if I turn on this cage exit, now it extends all the way up. I said keep it the same as the main cage, so it grays these out. You can uncheck it and make it different if you like. You have in here the hoop. What is the exit height? How far up does the extension go? Top's reference, go to the system line of the part. Number of hoops in the middle, how many do I want? Are the hoops equally spaced, yes or no? And I can uncheck that and control it myself, the spacing. For the straps, again, at the top, the straps going around. Sorry, not the straps going up and down, the vertical ones here. The hoops are the ones going around. This here, we can say, you know, segment 1, segment 2, segment 3, same thing we just saw. Or again, you could do it as all one and just go in and set it that way. Okay? Don't do it the same as me. Distribution, if you want total length, that gets rid of your segments. So your choice, how you want to set it up. And if they're bolted, you get bolt settings. And if they're welded, you get weld settings. And they're controlled here. The top half, different from the bottom half, or separate. So you have your main cage and you have your exit portion of the cage. When you're done, again, like I did here, you can set that up, save it, and then next time you need to bring that ladder in, very quickly, you can come in, you can make an entry, give it a name you're going to recognize, select it, just say load. If it's what you're doing all the time, you can even set it as your default. And that's going to give you an idea of what's in the cage ladder presently in 2025.1. With the ladder in place, you may want to connect the styles together. PowerPack offers a unique connection tool that can be used in several different ways. In this case, we will add the connections to the ladder we just created. Not every connection is going to come with the dialog box for the ladder. And so we also have another tool which may be helpful in this particular scenario. And I wanted to show that to you. If you come to the stair and railing vault, in here, about halfway down, you'll see it looks like this little connection. It's an area called connections. They have railing connections. So if you need to join them together, there's a long bolt with a sleeve in the middle. They have tube-to-tube connections. So if you split your rail and you need a sleeve in the middle, you want to add that in, we have a connection for that. But in this particular case, my verticals are split but not connected together, and I'm going to use the lap joint to connect them together. So in here, we have this option. It can be used on horizontal handrails, or in this case, on the ladder. And I'm going to take this and start it up. I'll just click on it. It tells me to select my objects. Now you'll see I have my vertical styles here, and they're split. So I'm just going to pick the first one, right-click, and then pick the second one, right-click. Now, on some cases, you may need to pick something else. I do not, so I'm just going to click a third time. And you'll see I'm going to get the plate comes in with 2 bolts, right? And it's going through and welded at the top, bolted at the bottom. Now you can go through, you have different options in here. So you have properties. Again, there's really nothing to choose. You can give it a name, what it's made with. Then you have your settings, right? So the lap plate, you can control what is the thickness, the width, and the width projection. So if you need to change any of those, the overall length, which side is it on? So if I wanted to, I could say I want it on the outside instead of the inside, and I can just switch that. You can see it moved it, right? So the offset, so to move it sideways, or initially it's placed centered along where that split is, and you can offset it from there. Relative to beam or absolute value, and then you can just type in their absolute values. You have in here the connection definition. So what type of bolt you want to use. Just put in a countersunk bolt here. Your positioning, how many rows. So it's just 1 row, 2 columns, right? So I got 1, 2 this way, but only 1 going this way. And then you have a distance in between the columns, a distance in between the rows. If you have more than 1, what is the offset for these? If you need to offset them, you can move them around. So very quick and easy way to do this. And you have it, is it bolted? Is it welded? And this is, side 1 and side 2 separately. So side 2 is welded, side 1 is bolted. And you can control each one however you like. When you're done, you have your library. You can save it. I might have like 5-inch plate with 2 bolts or 6-inch plate with 2 bolts. I set this one as default, which is why it came in that way. And every time you use it now, it's going to come in and automatically connect your parts together the way that you specify. Just select one, right click, select the other, right click, and then right click the 3rd time, and you're going to get that come in. So not a lot to do in the ladder here. I mean, it's split in 2 places along each side. So if I come into here, I can pick my lap joint, pick the first style, right click, second style, right click. I'm just going to finish this up and do the other side as well. So there, right click, there, right click, and there we go. So a quick tool for adding in, if you need this, little lap joint plate connection. You can bolt it on both sides, weld it on both sides, one side bolted, one side welded, move it inside or outside, set the spacing for the bolts if you have those on. It's a quick way to join that up. And that's it for the lap joint. If you like what you've seen so far, GRAITEC isn't stopping there. Each new release of the PowerPack is providing new tools or enhancing tools they've already created. The ladder is an example of this, as you can see. Some of the improvements being considered or worked on are the main cage hoop, flared, and the left and right cage exits. Even the cage ladder visual feedback is being considered. These are just a few of the items that development has planned. If you want to know more and even vote for a feature or add your own ideas, now you can from the GRAITEC Advantage website. Let's take a quick look at how this can be done. A quick way to find the GRAITEC Advantage portal is just go to your Google and type in GRAITEC Advantage. You're going to see a couple of links will bring you there. You just want to go to the GRAITEC Advantage or GRAITEC Advantage portal. It'll bring you to the website. Simply put in your name and password and log in from there. Once logged in, you're going to see you have a couple of different areas in here, different articles you can read, downloads, tutorials, training courses. You can submit support cases. You have the ability to download software and updates to the software from GRAITEC. We have here also now our product roadmap, and this is the area that I want to focus on. So if you click on that, you're going to see when you come to product roadmaps, it's going to open up with a new section that allows you to pick, well, which GRAITEC product are you interested in viewing? And it tells you a little bit about it on the side. You can choose your product. In this case, we're looking at PowerPack for advanced steel. When you click on that, it'll bring you into that section, which is related to the advanced steel PowerPack. And you're going to have your, basically, what is the roadmap? Where are they going down the road for development? You have a look into the future, what they have an idea of doing here,
And you can see each of the areas in progress, planned, under construction, released. It's described here. So you have features currently under development, ones that they plan to work on next, what's currently under construction or potential future developments. And then you have release, features that are already available and have been launched. And you can go through and you can check them out. So the ones that are in progress, these are the ones they're working on currently. And you can see, well, what's in the works right now, right? So I've got the turnbuckle, horizontal base plates. So now if you're doing handrails and maybe it's on a concrete stair, you can get those base plates horizontal. The railing post to web section, so a different type of connection by side to the web. And you'll notice down here for the cage on the ladder, coming up is the main cage entry hoop, so you can have a flare at the bottom. This will be being worked on. And the left and right exit. So at the top where you have your exit for the ladder, currently we have the step through. They're working on the left and right cage exit, which should be coming up with a future release since they're currently under development. Okay, so this is some of the things that are coming out for the ladder down the road. For planned, you can see they have some different things. More info in the PDF, special part palette, lab joint enabling in RVT so they can bring the joints over to Revit, the ones from the PowerPack, cage ladder visual feedback, there's another cage ladder enhancement. So different things like that. They have under consideration, different areas, model export, advanced steel special parts, in special part manager, improvements to explode drawings, straight stair types with curved landings, elements, introduction of cranked vertical transfer, spiral stairs, and so on. So I'm not going to read them all, but you can see there's quite a few. Now, with this, what you can do is you can come into here and you can see, well, I'm interested in this. Where is it? Are they working on it? Is it something they have planned or something that they're considering? And you can come in and you can actually vote on these. And you can say, well, you know what? I really like the idea of new support types for cage ladder. So I'm going to come into here. I can find out a little bit more about it. What is this? We consider that it should be extended to allow for section profiles, also plate options, et cetera, et cetera. So it's another enhancement for the cage ladder. Maybe you really want that. You can say, how important is this to you? It's not important. It's critical. You decide. And you can say, if I click on critical, why or what would be the benefit of it, or why would I like to have this? Just a little note to give them an idea of how this would play into your current workflow or why you think it's not important. And then leave your email address. And what happens if you leave the email address is when this tool gets accepted or gets developed, they're going to inform you that, hey, this is being developed. This is something that we've decided that we're going to add into the program because a lot of people want it. And or they might just contact you and say, hey, I understand this is something you really need. Can you give us a little more information so that we can make sure that it suits your needs? So that's the reason for the email address. Once you put that in there, it will upvote this. So it'll get another vote here. And then what they do is when they're looking to improve the software or enhance the software or add something to it, they'll come and see, well, who's voted on what seems to be the most popular one in here, which one should we work on next? And based on the votes, that's how they're going to decide what's their priority. And that's one of the considerations anyway. So you may want to take some time to come in and take a look at, in the GRAITEC Advantage website, what their roadmap is, what they're working on, what they plan on working on, what they're considering, and take a minute just to give some feedback and say, yeah, this is a really good idea. I wish you had this in the software. It lets them know where they should focus next. All right. If you don't see an idea or you think there's something that should be in there, but it's not in any of these areas, they do have a button at the top here that says submit idea. And if you click on that, it's kind of the same thing you saw before. You write what your idea is and how it would pertain to your workflow or your business. Why it should be in there. I would really like to have this added because And then how important is it to you? Not important, critical, important, nice to have. You add that in and your email address, and then it will be added in and other people can vote on that as well. So a great new area to the GRAITEC Advantage, which actually allows input from people who matter. I mean, you guys are the ones using the software, so it matters, and we would love to hear from you. Come log in, check it out, upvote what is pertinent to you, add your ideas, and so on. All right. So this is the GRAITEC Advantage product roadmaps. I hope to see you there.
Let's take a moment to recap what was covered. First, we looked at how a ladder was inserted and the options available to adjust the ladder. Next, the lap joint connection was also covered and used to join the vertical sides of the ladder together. And finally, we looked at where you can go to discover what's being developed and how to provide your feedback. Remember, your voice matters. If you found the presentation helpful and would be interested in seeing more, please feel free to visit our event calendar. There are many presentations of various different software, and you are free to choose whichever ones you feel would best benefit you. Thank you for joining us today, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.